Hello, Craig Howard here. A couple days ago, my son and daughter-in-law asked me to go with them to look at a house. It was a possible fixer-upper that they were wanting to look at buying, and the price was right, but I've bought several houses and I've worked on several houses and did housing construction when I was in college and continue to do building work, not as a career or as a job, but in service projects and camp projects and things like that. So I've stayed pretty current on carpentry work, and they wanted me to look at the house structurally. The minute I walked in the house, there's a center bearing partition, center wall, bearing wall, that the weight of the upstairs rests on. And as soon as I walked in the house, I noticed that the floors on both sides of that wall sloped towards the wall, sloped down towards the wall. And that told me something right away. It told me that the carrier beam, the main beam that carries the house, was sinking. That meant the foundation under that beam was either the foundation under the beam was failing and the beam itself was sinking, or it meant that the beam was undersized. So I went down in the cellar and I looked, and actually both things had happened. The foundation wasn't in good shape and it was sinking, and the beam was way undersized, and you could see where people had tried to scab boards alongside of it to bolster it, and had even back under some of the floor joists put other little beams with jacks under it. But the house had a major structural problem, and the structural problem was that the foundation, whoever put the foundation in, was insufficient. It was inadequate. It wasn't heavy enough. It wasn't wide enough. Whenever you pour a footer to carry a house, you want it wide. Depth isn't as important as width. You need to make it wide enough. It's just like it's just like snowshoes. When you put that big snowshoe on, it keeps you from sinking into the snow. Well, a wide foundation keeps you from sinking into the ground. And they hadn't done that. They had under-engineered their foundation, and that's something whenever I'm pouring a footer or whenever I want to do something like that, I always if you're going to over-engineer anything in your house, over-engineer your foundation. That's what everything rests on. That's the starting point. Go big on your footers, go wide on your footers, go heavy on your blocks. Over-engineer. If you're going to over-engineer anything, do your foundation. Well, the same thing is true in our spiritual lives. The Bible tells us over in Matthew chapter 7, when Jesus is teaching in the Sermon on the Mount, it says, "But everyone who hears these sayings of mine and does not do them will be like a foolish man who built his house on sand." I can't think of a worse medium to build a house on than to go out on a beach and try to build a house on sand, because that sand, you've got to get down to bedrock. You've got to get down to firm ground. You'd have to dig down through the sand. You'd have to find out where the ground is firm and then come up from there. You build your house on the sand, the foundation's going to sink, everything's going to settle, the house is going to crack, everything's going to warp, everything's going to twist. It won't work. It won't be any good. But Jesus said that people that don't listen to His word, that ignore His word, are just like people who build their house on the sand. God gave us His word not to cramp our living, or not to take things away from us, or not to make it so that we can't enjoy life. I enjoy life, but He gave us His word so that we could have the protection of having a firm foundation under us, having a safe foundation under us. If a house doesn't have a good foundation, that house will eventually fail and will be destroyed. And if a person doesn't have the good foundation of resting their life on the Word of God and on the promises of God, that life is eventually going to fail, and it's going to find destruction. Well, I hope you understand. Part of the reason that I do these devotionals in the morning is just for this reason, to help you put your life on a firm foundation. I hope you'll share this with somebody, because this is a message that needs to get out there, that people need to find out how to put their lives on a firm footing, and that starts with getting in the Word of God. I once had a prosecuting attorney tell me that he thinks everybody ought to go to jail at some point in their life, because it seems like everybody that goes to jail finds a relationship with God, because they get to their lowest part in their life and they realize their foundation's no good. And so they get in Bible studies and things like that while they're in prison, and they try to get their life put back together through listening to the Word of God and understanding the teachings of God and developing a relationship with God. So today, my question for you is: does your life have a firm foundation? Is your life built on sand, or is it built on a rock that's going to stand, on a foundation that's going to stand? I hope today your life is on a firm foundation. Something to think about today. Have a wonderful day. God bless you in all that you do. I'll talk to you tomorrow.